Okay, hello. I want to go ahead and say for the VOD viewers, I know some people watch the VOD. I'll say this again later, but next week, I think the whole stream is going to be me talking to Gate, the developer of Derelict Star. And so yeah, I strongly encourage you to play Derelict Star if you haven't already. At least play some of it so you will be able to follow what we're talking about. Although I will try to make it comprehensible without having played the game. But it's also just a really good game, and it's my favorite game of the year so far, almost certainly. I like Caramel Action a lot as well, but I think Derelict Star is my favorite game of the year so far. It's possibly my favorite platformer like ever. I think it is a must-play game if you are at all familiar with platformers. So maybe consider playing that this week before next stream. Yeah, should be fun. Now let me get everyone here. Everyone from the Discord and Twitter and stuff. What's up, Allo? Yeah, and it's not expensive. It's if you're worried about money, it is very good value for the money. I think it's like $10, and I've played over 20 hours of it and still have some optional stuff left. Okay, let's do this, and let's do this, and let's do this. Okay. I should quote tweet my hit tweet from this week. Let's see. Talking about this, among other things, on stream right now. Get in here. And by hit tweet, I mean it hit it hit people like a truck, and everyone hated it. But we'll get there. Let's copy this link. It takes so long to announce things. I should probably do this before I start the stream. Sorry, but it also takes people a minute to get in here. This is like the waiting room. You know, people have serious streamers, like they don't start streaming immediately. They like start the stream, like they go live, and then like there's some kind of just like loading screen type of situation for like 5 or 10 minutes before they actually do anything. So this is actually above the bar. Like, right, I'm giving you more than you deserve right now. By big streamer standards, at least. Okay. So, someone has posted the never mind. They're not gonna get into what people are telling or sending to me on Twitter. These people are so mad, man. I haven't even looked yet. I saw that the first word is bespoke, so my subconscious has been cooking on that. And if that's the definition, like, it's so over when I finally look at the puzzle. Although that seems kind of like a hard word to synonymize. Can't stick around. Want to drop by to say I hope you stick with these streams. Been enjoying them. Appreciate that, man. Can't stay, but I'm keeping your stream open on a tab like a true fan. Have fun. All right, I will make sure to not trust the viewership numbers if I happen to look at that, which I never do. Sorry, I also forgot to drink water. Also, you were going to solve the clues before me, no matter what. I'm pretty confident about that. Okay, here we go. Let's try to do a cryptic crossword while people are rolling in. I will get to talking about video games, but let's do this. I'm probably not gonna do the whole thing because these things take me like, I think my average time has, I've probably gotten it down to like 45 minutes instead of an hour. I mean, it started off like I couldn't even do it without the hints. But yeah, okay. Bespoke fashion. To fashion something is to create. Bespoke is like unique or like, I mean, okay, so my impression, let me talk through. Okay, let me actually just explain what this is, how this works compared to normal crosswords, since so that I'm not only talking to Caitlin. Cryptic, actually, I guess people know. People know about Minute Cryptic, maybe? I don't know. But anyway, so the clues are not exactly like normal crossword clues, but they're also not quite as different as you might think, because there's always one part of the clue that's kind of like a normal crossword clue, where it's basically just like it's giving you a word and you kind of have to think of a synonym or something that fits with that word in a very direct way. And then the rest of the clue is like some kind of wordplay or like device, like a mechanical kind of, it's telling you like a formula. It's giving you a formula which you can use to, in a kind of logical way, construct the same thing that the definition part of the clue is telling you. So you've got two different ways to confirm that your answer is correct, or two different ways to get at the answer. But because of that, my impression and my impression so far from solving these is that when there's only two words, by the way, this is like a noob kind of, these are meant to be like more accessible to newcomers. The wordplay and stuff is not nearly as crazy as a lot of the more hardcore ones that you can find, or as the Minute Cryptic ones even. But my impression, what I've been trying to say this whole time, my impression is that when there's only two words, it kind of has to be just a double definition, which is something that you get sometimes, where the first part of the clue is a definition and the second part of the clue is also just a definition. They're both kind of straightforward. And so we're looking for a word that can mean bespoke and can also mean fashion. It is 6 letters. And I mean, there are fashions like, it could be a specific fashion. Like it could be Rococo, or that's not really, maybe that's a fashion. I don't know. It could be like Baroque. I feel like that's not a fashion. I don't know anything about fashion with regards to clothes. I don't know. I'm gonna look at a different one. I feel like that's not my jam. Although I maybe be more patient. Okay, bespoke. If something is bespoke, it's like made for a specific purpose, right? I feel like that's the only. Okay, now you're gonna see how insane doing these crosswords makes me go full schizo in a way that like now I'm thinking bespoke could be some insane wordplay where it's like I'm a magician casting a spell that turns you into a part of a wheel. like bespoke. Like I don't know what's like too far to like start. I just automatically start thinking about this completely unhinged, insane stuff. Anyway, let's look at a different one. Frank, so hot dog, hopefully. Cooked in sugar, lacks last bit of glaze. So last. Okay. So when I see something like last bit of, I feel like that's just going to take the last letter, but I also see lacks. Okay, the most straightforward way for me to read this last part of the clue is like there's a word for cook. Okay, I don't know how to explain this. Lacks last bit of probably means I'm taking the last letter of glaze, or I'm taking the last letter of a synonym for glaze, and I'm removing that from sugar, or a synonym for sugar. So another thing about this particular format, or this particular crossword, I don't think it's hot dog, by the way, so I'm going to delete that. This particular website, whatever, it only uses one device per clue. So, I'm thinking that cooked could maybe mean like, could maybe be an anagram indicator. Like you're supposed to anagram the letters of in sugar, but without the last letter of something. Like remove one letter from in sugar based on this part, and then anagram it. But I know that that's not the case, because if it's an anagram, it's not going to be anything else. It's not going to have any of this like removing a letter. If it's removing a letter, it's just removing a letter. Or if it's removing part of a word, it's just that. If it's like, yeah, it's not like Minute Cryptic or like most cryptic crosswords, I guess, where there can be series of. Yeah, I knew what you were saying immediately, Caitlin, and I figured that would be the case, but some of these are at least somewhat obvious. Yeah, but if I had thought about that for a second, I would probably have realized that Frank is almost certainly the first thing that people think of for hot dog. But Frank, Frank also means like, man, you're gonna see exactly how bad I am at these. Like, there are so many words that I know, and I just really struggle to summon them up. But like, I know that Frank means like straightforward, like, frankly, like, honestly. Frank maybe means honest, actually. Cooked in sugar. Cooked in sugar. I don't know if we're like building up the word. I kind of feel like the lax is telling me that this the lax makes me think this has to be some kind of like subtraction type of thing. I don't know what you call that. Deletion. You're taking up a word and then you're deleting part of another word. This seems harder than Minute Cryptic. This one might be particularly hard. The difficulty has varied quite a bit. But this is easier than Minute Cryptic for me because you get the crosses and stuff. Like, this is one thing that's great about Minute Cryptic varies a lot too. But especially because it's just one clue and you don't get the crosses. You're kind of at sea if you just don't know a particular one, right? You can't. Yeah, like that's one thing that's great about crosswords in general. And cryptic crosswords actually kind of amplify this in a way with the way that they have two different parts to each clue, right? Like there's a strong kind of dynamic difficulty, what I think of as like the good kind of dynamic difficulty aspect to them, where, the overall difficulty of a puzzle tends to like even out. It tends to, each individual clue can dramatically vary in difficulty, but the overall puzzle tends to even out, because you can figure out the easier clues cold, and then the harder clues you can use the letters, right? Like now, imagine this word honest were correct, like this would help me a lot with figuring this out, etc. But then the same thing applies with like each clue has two parts, so maybe one part is a lot easier than the other part, and this is going to be very individual, right? Like one part of the clue could be a lot easier for me, and the other part could be a lot easier for you, because there's such a heavy knowledge component. Like when there's such a heavy knowledge component to the game like this, it really, really matters that there's some way to kind of even out the difficulty like this. Sounds like meta progression slop to me. How do you know it's a good crossword if you haven't even beaten it yet? Well, I don't know. I don't know that this is a good one, but I've done like 20 from the same guy on the same website. So, but yeah, they do use pretty tricky words sometimes, I will say. And like yesterday, I did one that had. I'm doing a really great job of actually focusing on playing this, by the way. But we all know that's not the point. Anyway, yesterday I did one where let me see if I can just find it. Actually, yeah, I have the link right here. Which one was it? Number 60. Okay, so yeah, it doesn't have my thing from a different browser, but this one and this one, which are crossing each other, by the way, I would never have gotten these in a million years, except Misa happened to join me to try this one, which, by the way, this is very interesting. Like, Misa does not play. It surprised me that Misa was interested in cryptic crosswords. Like, it just seems like such a hardcore, like, gamer type of thing. I mean, not like gamer in the normal sense that we think of in video games, obviously, but like it's a pure game, right? It's a gamer brained type of activity. You're you're playing a game here, right? And it's a very like esoteric, weird kind of game that has, you would think of it as having a high barrier to entry and stuff like that. But and Misa just doesn't play a lot of like games. Like when she's interested in video games, it's for the vibes and for the like story and stuff like that. But she just got really into this and completely saved the day on these two, which would have been impossible for me because of knowledge issues. Like, so Vegas. Well, I'll just tell what it is. So apparently there's some like male strippers or something called Chippendales. And I just never heard of that. Like, I just never heard of that. So if we imagine me trying to construct, like I had all of the crosses. I got all of these. But if I imagine myself trying to construct this from the wordplay, and the way the wordplay works is fried food, which is a chip, and then beer, which is ale, ALE for beer, and then in between those, so hang between, the word hang is between them, and to hang is to pend. Which, yeah, ale is reasonable. I thought of that. Chip is just not really what I think of as fried food, so I probably would have been able to figure it out, though, with the C and I. But I was just thinking, like, I thought of this, right? I thought of pin, right? You pin something to the wall to hang it. And penned is just, I mean, I know that penned means hang, like a pendulum or a pendant or whatever, like, but that's just, to use it in this way is very archaic, and it's just not in the first 50 things I would have thought for hang. So, and yeah, like I know little enough about alcohol as well that like there could have very easily been a 4-letter word that fits for beer here, you know, like a 4-letter name of a beer. Like, this one I thought was, wait, yeah, match, a match is a meat, and then over a. Anyway, this does anyone know this one? Because I also had a serious knowledge issue here. Look away if you want to keep trying to solve it without seeing it. I'm going to type it in. Again, just never heard of this. This is apparently a city. Sorry, I shouldn't say it. I shouldn't say it. People are looking away. But maybe you've probably figured that part out if you're good at cryptic crosswords. If you have any chance at solving this in a reasonable amount of time, you've probably figured it out that there's a name of a city in here. Yeah, this is a city. This is a city in Nepal apparently, and So party where bros bring their kitties. All of this like homophones, right? All of this is like a homophone type of situation where cat. This is pronounced Catmandu, apparently. Catmandu. But like I'm thinking like fraternity parties, right? I'm thinking like I don't know. Like I had the actually didn't have this K either because I thought I was gonna have a knowledge issue here. Actually, I never figured out what this means. But anyway, this puzzle. My point is this puzzle had some serious knowledge issues for me, but that has not been the norm on these. And I do like the high difficulty in general, even though I like that it's difficult without totally confusing me with the 3 down. Oh, well, this one wasn't bad, but yeah, you figured this one out while I was still trying to explain it to you how the exclamation point works. That was nice. Anyway, back to let's try to solve this one, or let's try to make some kind of dent in this one. How's it going, Platty? You know, I do think I'm about ready. I do think I'm probably ready to move on. And based on my performance with the Minute Cryptics recently, I do think I'm ready to move on to less beginner, what if you can call this beginner friendly cryptics. And I'm taking recommendations for that. Like, where do I find cryptics that are not like insane, but are are more advanced with the kind of wordplay and stuff than this. Yes, or it was an anagram of. Let me see if I can reopen it. It was an anagram of takeout glop. The answer was potato. What was it? It was like that or something. It was some kind of Jewish casserole, which I had never heard of. Can we? Is it that? Kugel, sorry. It's this. Yeah, the trivia on that one in particular, I have no idea why. I ran into maybe like one or two things in the other like 19 that I've done where it felt like I had a pretty big knowledge issue and I had to like figure it out with the wordplay or like guess a letter or something. Wait, what is a bubby? Yeah. I mean, if it's gonna be really hard, and this is the same way that I feel about. I don't know if this is just a me problem. Oh, it means grandma. That's funny. I don't know if this is just a me problem, but like in something like Oberdin, maybe that's a bad example because I haven't gotten through Oberdin, but I don't know of another like mainstream one that people would really know. The example I'm thinking of is 7 Days to End with You, which is a detective-y kind of game that I played kind of co-op detective with Misa, and I had a much better experience just because like I just think it can be a much better experience to play certain types of games, quote unquote co-op. Cryptic Crosswords, I feel like if they just have a little bit of restraint with the or crosswords in general, like if they just have a little bit of restraint with the trivia, with the more obscure trivia, it shouldn't be that big of a problem. Or like you can also just have it like Puzzmo. Obviously, like this is not the norm in like other crossword solving apps, websites, whatever, but like in Puzzmo, like if the way the scoring system works in Puzzmo, it rewards you for using a hint if you are truly stuck rather than like just randomly guessing or whatever. If you truly feel like you don't know something, you should just press the hint button. Other crossword websites seem to not have any kind of scoring system, or maybe I don't know. Maybe they have something where they add a time penalty if you reveal a letter or something like that. Like you could imagine making it work so that one person can have a smooth experience no matter what. One or two. Wow, I didn't know that per puzzle if used creatively. Yeah, I just mean like it shouldn't. Yeah, I mean I want to learn interesting things, but again, like it has to. If it's when I mean restraint, I don't necessarily mean don't include it. Like I more mean have some awareness about how obscure this thing is, and if it's very obscure, make sure that the other half of the clue is not outrageously difficult or doesn't also require obscure trivia, and or like you have very helpful cross letters. We're doing great here. Reportedly burnt veggie. So reportedly surely means like homophone. Really? I wouldn't have thought that was necessarily. I mean, what is fair game when this is something that it's not really normally a competition. I mean, it has a timer, but which is up to 18 minutes already, by the way. Although maybe that started before the stream. But anyway, reportedly burnt. So I'm looking for. I'm trying to think of a synonym for burnt that homophones to the name of a veggie, probably. Which makes me want to just think of all the veggies I know. Because I feel like I'm better at just listing things within a category than I am at synonyms. LA Times Crossword has a multiplayer mode, which is a fun way to have your friends help fill out the same puzzle. That's cool. So wait, did I not get any recommendations for where to go for other? Onion. I don't think it's onion. Reportedly burnt. Charred. Okay, that was easy. I really didn't think, my brain was thinking like that's not the right number of letters, which often happens when I'm thinking about these homophones. I forget which part is which. A board game in the past. That was easy. So it's A, and then it's a board game, which is Go, which also means and then ago means in the past. So one thing I've noticed. One thing I've noticed is that a kind of a dead giveaway here, and I don't know how much of this is just me knowing the cluing style of this particular constructor, but there's definitely something where you can think about why would they put a certain thing there if it's not relevant in a particular way, right? So the letter A in this case, I'm thinking like, okay, if the whole thing were just a board game, right? If it's 3 letters for a board game, why would they have the letter A? It would just say board game in the past. Because it says A, I'm immediately thinking, okay, the letter A is going to be in there, and then the board game is going to be 2 letters. And like, how many board games are only 2 letters? So you have recommendations, but they're all stupid. Okay, well, maybe post them anyway. But yeah, like these two were so easy. These two were so easy relative to like those ones I was showing from that other puzzle. It's just all over the place, the difficulty. Okay, yeah, I appreciate that. What's up, Perp? Do I want to try this one? Long race few. Removing outer layers. Okay, so one thing that I've noticed is that when they have an exclamation point, so this is weird because there's something after the exclamation point, but when an exclamation point is at the end, it seems to mean, or at least sometimes it means that the whole clue, instead of being divided into 2 parts, where one part is definition and one part is wordplay, if there's an exclamation point at the end, it seems to mean that the whole clue is wordplay, and the whole clue is also can alternatively be read as a definition. It usually only means and lit if it's at the very end. And lit, like and literal, or is that just some other weird? And literally so. Okay. Does that come from somewhere, or is that just a cryptic a convention that they made up for this with no basis in what the exclamation point normally means? Okay, so long race. So removing outer layers, like, could mean something like stripping. Today's minute cryptic had exclamation point but wasn't and lit. I solved that one. That was like the easiest minute cryptic of all time. That was like a second cryptic. But I didn't even notice the exclamation point because I don't even think I read the whole clue. Long race few. Long race few. Like a sigh. Like you sigh at the end of a race, or you long. So obviously removing outer layers could mean you take out the first and last letter of the word. So I'm thinking like long race, like marathon. I'm trying to think of what a 4-letter word for that would be, but I'm also thinking few. Some kind of synonym for few when you take off the first and last letter is going to be this. Long race. I mean, it could be wordplay where like long, like a race, like a species, like there's a really long type of lizard that is 4 letters or something. Coined by Ximenes. So it's okay. Yeah, I don't know. Acre. I keep thinking achu. For some reason, few was making me think achu. I think that was also in a crossword recently that I did. Trashed woke figure in Star Wars. In figure in Star Wars is trashed. I'm struggling to see how this splits, because how this clue splits into two, because trashed woke. I guess oh right. Okay. So trashed is an anagram indicator. Yeah, that's what I was asking. Like, was it just to have a shorthand at all, or I was just wondering if there was some precedent in some other universe for that. Long race. What could even go in this first space? Like an ache? Long race? I mean, you might ache after a race. I don't know. There's got to be some other consonant, that's what it's called, that can go in here, right? I'm really bad at thinking through the letters in my head, so I have to actually do this. I guess it could be like a Jesus acronym. My brain is not working today. MC. That would be spelled differently. I don't know. I don't know what that one is. Anyway, I don't know how much more I have to say about Cryptic Crosswords, so maybe we should move on to something that more than 3 people care about. Did a few easy ones. I'll finish it later, I guess. Maybe I'll try to finish it at the end of the stream. I'm not too tired. So this happened. This happened this week. First of all, let me just say, for a tweet to get 85,000 views and only 300 likes is one of the most... That is such an insane bad ratio. Like, I saw some like how to, like, tips for getting big on Twitter a long time ago, and like, I'm pretty sure they were saying that you for a tweet to really blow up, it normally needs a ratio of like 1 to 20, right? So like, for every 1 like, you know, you're getting 1 like for every 20 views that you get, is what that's saying. And you want at least as many likes as that, was what they're saying, I'm pretty sure. And this is like 1 like for every 300 views or something. So people really hated this tweet and they got really mad, but they also didn't understand what I was saying. So I just felt like I needed to clarify this at least to you guys and make sure we're all on the same page, and maybe riff on this a little bit. So someone was saying like whatever about Elden Ring, and this person was saying like, you know, I'm not bad. Like, I beat the game. I got all the achievements, etc. Now, this just rubs me the wrong way, and I don't care about Elden Ring, so don't talk to me about Elden Ring like everyone in the comments was. I mean, to say I don't care is a little bit of an exaggeration. Like, I'm interested in playing it at some point, but I was so burnt out on Souls when it came out that I haven't played it yet. But yeah, I'm trying to make a general point here, and I never understand how you guys who are so obsessed with the details of games don't make games. I will respond to that in just a minute. Because there are very good reasons. At least one very good reason. Yeah. I would say at least 2 very good reasons. I will get back to it though. So this just rubs me the wrong way. Like, it should be obvious, and I just grabbed the 2 analogies that were closest to mind. I don't know if these are necessarily the best analogies to get people on the same page with me, but like, completing something does not guarantee that you understood it. And when I'm saying appreciation, I'm not necessarily saying like you have to like the thing, which is another way in which people got confused in the comments. But like, I'm just saying appreciation as in like, you appreciate, like, you know, you value something, you know, you can judge the value of it, right? Like, you know its worth. You understand what people like about it. You understand what is good about it, even if that is not something that you are personally into, even if it doesn't work for you specifically, whatever. So completion is not appreciation. Like, this tells me basically nothing. The fact that you played the game for 210 hours and got all the achievements does not tell me whether I should value your opinion on the game at all. It certainly doesn't tell me whether your opinion is relevant to me, right? Like, I would have to know why you didn't like the game, and maybe something about your taste in general, what kinds of games you do like and why you like them. You know, if I understand a little bit more about you, then I can listen to what you say about Elden Ring and decide whether that's relevant to me in any way. But like, even putting that aside, like, 210 hours, all the achievements, like, that could be a bad thing. Like, to say I played the game for 210 hours and I got all the achievements and I didn't like it, the main possibility that's in my head when I see that is, okay, like, it takes me back, right? It takes me back to when I was like 20 or 18 or something. You know, I was much younger and I hadn't played nearly as many games, and my feelings and my opinions were not nearly as fleshed out. And I wasn't as confident in my opinions because my opinions were more loosely held. I didn't understand my own taste very well yet. And back then, I would play games like this. I would play a game like for a really long time and then look back at it and be like, I don't know. Like that just doesn't really happen to me very often anymore. It still happens sometimes. Like Void Stranger, again, was an example where I played for like 50 plus hours or something and ended up not liking it. But I also kind of had the sneaking suspicion the whole time that I didn't really like it, or I was hoping for it to change, right? So that's kind of an exception. And maybe that they were doing this for Elden Ring, but I'm just telling you, like, these days that would never happen to me with Elden Ring. And I think most people who have really strong, have a really strong understanding of their own taste, and this doesn't mean that they're closed-minded, by the way, but it means that when they see a game that is very much like a lot of other games most of the time, like Elden Ring, you can understand Elden Ring pretty quickly. It doesn't take 210 hours to understand what you're looking at when you play Elden Ring. If you played other open world games, played other Souls-likes, played a lot of action games in general and a lot of exploration games in general, like, it just doesn't take 210 hours to know what you're working with. It takes like maybe 10 hours. And of course the game could change, by the end of the main playthrough or whatever, but like, it's not going to change after that. And what is the main playthrough for this game? Like 100 hours or something? So this mostly is like a red flag to me. It's like, do you really, like, you're probably just not that, you're probably just not that deep into games, and you're still kind of figuring out your own taste. And that doesn't mean that I'm not going to listen to you at all, but it certainly is not like it's not the like proof of great opinion, proof of valid opinion that this person seems to think it is, right? So yeah, I just think that if you, like, it's fine to post something like this, especially on Twitter, where people are so stupid and are going to like try to discredit you by saying you're bad no matter what, like by saying that you couldn't get through the game or whatever. Stupid people are going to show up and do that. So it makes sense. It makes sense if you want to include something like this, but that by itself is not an argument. That's all I'm saying. It's just not an argument at all. Like you see this a lot with The Witness, like, because that's just a game. I mean, let me stay on Elden Ring for a little bit longer, actually. Like, there are a few different possibilities for how you could get all the way through Elden Ring and not really have a good opinion about it. And by good opinion, I really just mean like an opinion that is representative of your own ideal self, right? An opinion that reflects how you would actually feel about it if you knew more, or if you had the right mindset or something like that. Like, I think a lot of people get all the way through, and especially people who are kind of completionists. I think the completionist mindset, which is kind of also signaled here by the fact that they posted this, that they might have a completionist mindset is kind of signaled here. I think that mindset can be kind of poisonous, and in a couple of different ways can hold you back and prevent you from fully enjoying a game, or from fully appreciating a game. Like, if you're just trying to get to the next thing, like, okay, I will actually switch to a different game, but I'm not going to switch to The Witness. I'm going to switch to Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild is a much more enjoyable game if you approach it with a playful mindset, and you recognize the fact that this is a kind of sandboxy game. It has objectives in it. It has a lot of objectives in it, enough objectives that you could sit there for 200 hours just doing the objectives in the most boring, straightforward, like, unfun way possible. But I think to appreciate Breath of the Wild, you don't to complete Breath of the Wild, all the shrines and all the Korok seeds and whatever, that's an example where, even more than Elden Ring, I would think that if you did that at all, you probably don't appreciate the game, because that's not at least for the vast majority of people, that's not what is going to be the most interesting experience playing the game. What's going to be interesting is like playing around with all of the tools that you have and trying to make cool physicsy stuff happen and solve new, when you encounter a new problem, even though it's very similar to all the other problems you've encountered so far, and you might be able to solve it with just like shooting your arrows and then swinging your sword, or, solve this shrine a very similar way to some previous shrine. Like you don't have to like slow down and like really puzzle over like what is a new piece of tech that I can figure out here, but just having taking a kind of lighter, more playful mindset rather than the always thinking about the next thing mechanical kind of mindset leads to you automatically figuring out more fun things and trying more things that end up giving you a much better experience with the game, right? And I think there are ways that kind of thing can happen in Elden Ring as well. I mean, for example, you might like, if you're just trying to get through the game, you might just use summons. You might abuse every tool that the game gives you, including like summoning for every boss, and intentionally using the most OP weapons even when they seem very unfun to you. Like I know there are arcade heads probably in the audience or listening to me right now who would say that it is your moral responsibility to do that, but I just don't agree with that. Like I'm not saying that games shouldn't be designed around, competitive games especially should absolutely be designed around the most degenerate strategies, and they should try to discourage those kinds of strategies, etc. But if you're just trying to appreciate the game for what it is, you have to recognize that Elden Ring is just not that kind of game, and most modern mainstream games are just not that kind of game. And if we want, like, anyway, that's I'm kind of getting into a tangent, but my point is, if you want to maximally enjoy and appreciate Elden Ring, you probably don't. Maybe it's going to vary from person to person. Maybe some people are going to want to summon for every boss fight and just get through it and see everything, and they're just not capable for some reason of appreciating the boss fights at all, and so they just want to minimally engage with that so that they can get through and see the whole world and see the whole story or whatever. But for most people, that's probably not like engaging. You probably want to engage with the bosses a little bit more, right? You probably don't want to just have someone carry you in co-op so that you can get through every boss in the first try. You're missing a big part of the game. You're certainly missing a big part of what a lot of people love about the game. And it's complicated because, again, this is something that changes if you've played a lot of games and you really know what you're dealing with. Like at this point, I kind of understand what Elden Ring boss fights are like. I've seen that kind of thing in other games, and I can make a lot of connections to other types of games and understand to what extent those boss fights are for me. And they're only kind of for me, I would say. But yeah, when you're newer to a game, or when a game is less familiar to you, just because of less experience with games in general or with the genre or whatever, you probably don't want to just get through as quickly as possible. And so a completionist mindset is probably kind of leading you astray in terms of like, yeah, that's just one example. Like there's kind of a lot of reasons, but I really think it's worth emphasizing just the extent to which the mindset shift alone like unlocks your ability to enjoy. Like it's kind of a stressful mindset. It's kind of focusing on completion tends to, it's such a simple metric of success, right? If your idea of success, your only goal is to get through the game, it kind of narrows your thinking, and it narrows your perception of what's happening. You can almost like things, the beautiful environments and the interesting, maybe funny things or strange or surprising things that happen are not going to pop in your consciousness, in your perception, in the same way that they would if you came in with a more relaxed and open-minded, and here I am just looking for what might be interesting in this game that I can appreciate about it, kind of mindset. Curious if we're on the same page here. Somehow people complete zero player and they're still like, why isn't it interactive though? Yeah, I don't know. It's just, I mean, so I can maybe relate to that a little bit, like, because I do tend to. No, that's not really true. Like, yeah, I do tend to go a lot deeper after playing something, and often if something's really interesting, then like after playing it, I will look back on it and appreciate it more deeply afterwards. Just because, you know, when I'm in it, I'm in it. But yeah, I wouldn't say something like that for sure. 100% Zelda games that I don't like, just so I can determine what about them specifically doesn't work for me versus the Zelda games that I do like, so it's an introspective exercise. Yeah, and yeah, again, yeah, so none of this is like supposed to be set in stone, like hard rules or anything, right? Like, I'm not saying that this person necessarily fell into any of the kind of traps that I'm describing. Like, I'm just describing my impression when I see something like this, right? And the number one ranked possibility in my head is that they somehow did not maybe did not engage with the writer, maybe not that, but they aren't quite as deep in it as I would like to for yeah. I don't know. I think you get what I'm saying. But yeah, it's totally fine as an introspective exercise. Like that is how you develop your taste, is by doing that and thinking about it. But I do think 210 hours is quite a long time, and you know, it's likely that they were kind of on autopilot. Like I said something in the replies somewhere. I responded like this is a good one. I said something in the replies somewhere about how I cracked myself up, man. What was I saying? It's likely that they were kind of asleep at the wheel. There's a way of going through a game, you know, spending 200 hours playing a game without this gets back to what I was just saying about what Caitlin said about zero player. Like, you should be doing some amount of introspection and questioning and, you know, like looking at your experience while you are playing it. You shouldn't save all of the introspection for afterwards, right? And I just think that even if you're trying to do this type of introspective exercise, develop your taste, etc., for Elden Ring, it shouldn't take 210 hours. I just really have a hard time imagining how, like, getting all the weapons or whatever the achievements are. I don't know what the achievements are for Elden Ring specifically. I'm just guessing based on the Dark Souls achievements. But, like, you know, is that part really helping you introspect and develop and understand your own taste? Is this yeah, I don't know. I just think if you're not asleep at the wheel, you start questioning certain things a lot earlier, and you're a lot less likely to sit playing one game for 210 hours. There's just a lot of other games to play, man. Like, getting more examples is more useful than playing the same game after a certain point, and I think for Elden Ring that point is likely before the 210 hour mark. Well, again, I've talked about World of Warcraft before. Like, I have 200 plus days in World of Warcraft, so I have fallen into this trap before, at least sort of. But like, this was when I was like 10, first of all. So I was not as self-aware at that point, right? But you know, I'm not trying to like be on my high horse here and all that kind of thing. Like, I've had this experience, and I'm considering, when I say all of this stuff, the types of things that I wish I had done differently when I played WoW and when I played like all these Final Fantasy games. I tried so many different Final Fantasy games before I realized, wait, I just don't like this. Like, I was just stuck in this mode, of like, I didn't know where to turn for interesting game recommendations other than like mainstream sources when I was a kid, like Nintendo Power Magazine, right? Like I was getting recommendations from like Nintendo Power Magazine, and sometimes they would be good recommendations, like Chibi Robo and Beautiful Joe and stuff like that, like stuff that gives me an interesting experience that I'm not getting anywhere else, but and the kind of experience that I at least was looking for, but there's just there's just a lot of misses as well when you're taking recommendations from sources like that, and like the mainstream like Kotaku or Polygon or whatever, like were places that I would look at in the early like 2010s for game recommendations. I think by that time I was starting to find, like I'd found like Matthew Matosis, right? But like he wasn't posting very often, and a lot of the time he was reviewing stuff that was very mainstream that I knew about. I just didn't know about like the cool indie scene back then. And so I was kind of stuck in this mode of just like, okay, like this is the new thing that got good reviews from mainstream reviewers or whatever. So I'm going to like try this and try to figure it out. And I felt like I was developing my taste by doing that. But in hindsight, I could have cut really a lot of that time and been playing more interesting like classic arcade games that I didn't know about, and indie games that exist, like I could have been playing like Starseed Pilgrim when that came out, or like 1001 Spikes. I didn't play those games until a good bit later, or like the original Spelunky when that came out, so yeah. My point is, I'm not like trying to act like I'm better than these people or whatever. Trying to help them or help someone, because I've been there. Okay. Yeah, I respect someone dropping the game more than someone 100%ing the checklist and not liking it. Exactly. And so in general, I assume when someone has posted their 100% as if they're making a point by posting it, I just have a tendency, I would tend to assume that they have that kind of checklisty mindset, and yeah, I would be more inclined to trust them based on their playtime alone if it were lower. Just catching up on all the chat. Yeah. The achievements for Souls games tend to be antithetical to how people enjoy it, at least somewhat antithetical. But you have to keep in mind there are different segments of the Souls audience, and they are making the achievements for the achievement hunting audience. They're not making the achievements for the other segments of the audience. And the achievement hunting audience wants that's exactly what they want. They want like an easy grind to get all the rocks to upgrade your weapons all the way or whatever. I honestly have been listening this whole time and I still have no idea what you're talking about. Well, I'm trying to think of like a totally different kind of example. But I mean, look, the examples I'm giving here, like, no one says, when people are saying, when someone comes up to you and says, this is not something, it's not, I'm acting like this is something that happens all the time, but like, if you were to say, I didn't like 2001: A Space Odyssey, pick any movie that's like somewhat hard to understand. If someone else says, well, like, are you sure you understood it? Like, or did you really get what it was going for? If you were to respond to that with, I spent 2.5 hours watching it, I watched every scene, my eyes were pointed at the screen the whole time, and I still think it's not very good. Like, that's just not saying anything. It's just not saying anything, because completion is not appreciation. Just because you completed the thing, you got through the thing, doesn't mean that you understand it. There's a big gap there, and I think gamers in gamer world, we often don't understand this. A lot of people get it twisted, because it's often so much more difficult to just complete a game than it is to complete a movie or a book or whatever. Like, you can read through every word in a book and not understand a single thing. And so I think people are, it's easier in those universes, in those worlds of books or movies or whatever. It's easier to understand that there's obviously a big gap between just getting through something and really understanding it, appreciating it. But in games, there's not always a big gap. A lot of it varies from one game to another. But certainly, if you say I got the 1 credit clear in Dodonpachi, or sorry, the 1 all, let's say, or let's exaggerate the example and say I got the 2 all in Dodonpachi. Like, you probably understand the game pretty well, right? Like, it's pretty hard to imagine how you would be missing a big chunk of what the game is. But that's just not always true. And again, with like I think Breath of the Wild is a good example. Like, a big part of what people are appreciating and admiring about that game is separate from the experience. Is not included in the experience of just getting through it. You have to kind of approach it with a certain mindset, or you have to think about it a certain way. You have to try certain things. There are things that are optional, or like, again, I think The Witness is a really good example, and you see people all the time saying, I got through The Witness and I didn't like it. And there's I don't fully understand why this is the case with The Witness, more so than like any other puzzle game, but I think it has to do with most of the puzzles being pretty small, and you can almost trial and error. You can like halfway understand things in those puzzles and trial and error your way through them. And I'm thinking specifically about the very hardest puzzle in the game on a shipwreck, where a lot of people kind of halfway understand what that puzzle is doing, and then because it's so hard, they like end up just brute forcing it because they're just like trying to draw random lines while they're partially thinking about it. And I think that some micro version of that, some smaller scale version of that, is happening for a lot of people who don't appreciate, usually people who can solve that shipwreck puzzle at all, even by brute force, are people who enjoyed most of the game, were able to enjoy most of the game. But people who even try that puzzle for more than a minute are people who were able to enjoy most of the game. But there's a different set of people who aren't able to enjoy the main game of The Witness. And I think often what's happening is a small scale version of that, where they like halfway understand something, and then they just kind of start drawing lines out of frustration. And because the puzzles are pretty small and simple-ish a lot of the time, they miss a lot of the ideas that are being communicated, right? Like, you can get through the Witness puzzles half understanding them, or you can get through the Witness puzzles fully understanding them, and even beyond that, you can get through the Witness puzzles like fully understanding why that is the solution, but also fully understanding like a sequence of subtle misdirects that happened on the way to the solution. Like, that game is really trying to constantly manage your psychology and manage what exactly you're thinking on the way to every solution, and it's sequencing its puzzles so that it's always thinking about, the design of that game is always thinking about what you just solved, and based on what you just solved, what you are going to be thinking this next puzzle is going to be about, and how you are expecting these ideas that you're going through to develop in the future. And then it's going to either lean into that in order to avoid off-topic difficulty kind of thing, or it's going to use that to subvert your expectations with some kind of surprising thing by like leading you to think this, and then once you get far enough on that thought process, like you hit a point where if you're paying enough attention, and if you're understanding what you're seeing, you realize, wait, this entire thought process must be wrong, and so I have to kind of go back to start from scratch and think about this another way, and somehow it has to be something completely different. And then it's channeling you, it's leading you through very specific, or it's at least trying to, it's throwing a lot of ideas at you within each puzzle and within each sequence, and there's a flow to it that you can follow that some people are better at following than other people are. Even if you can solve the whole puzzle, like there's a certain like let me put it this way. There's another way of thinking about it. It's a game that's more about communicating directly with the designer. The designer is more of a presence. The designer has more of a direct presence in the gameplay than most people expect, and than most people think they want in games. Like most people, maybe not most people, but a lot of gamers, they talk a lot about immersion, and they explicitly do not want, they will tell you that they do not want to feel like they're in a game, to feel like there is a game designer creating the experience for them, right? But in The Witness, and I'm not saying that every game should be like this, but The Witness is a great game where the designer is explicitly, actually, in the story, in the universe of the game, there is a literal explanation for this, that where the designer has a presence in the game, and you are meant to think of the puzzle solving process as a back and forth kind of communication with the designer, and you're supposed to see certain things as like, okay, what does he want me to think here, or why is this here, what did that kind of stuff. And so but because of what I said about most gamers' expectations being kind of the opposite of that, like immersion is almost the opposite in some sense of communicating with the designer directly. Because of that mismatch in expectations and reality of The Witness, a lot of people go into that game with the wrong kind of mindset, or at least they are not primed to appreciate one of the most interesting, maybe the most interesting or most crucial part of the game that makes it really, really special. So that's just another example of all of that is another example of what I'm saying. Completion is not appreciation. Like, just because you got through a game and got all the achievements does not mean that you have a good understanding of it. Yeah. Anything else that I didn't address in the comments before I go back to that other question, which was an interesting question? I imagine there's some contrarianism going on here. You mean from me? Oh, you mean from this person, the Elden Ring? Maybe. I don't know. I get accused of contrarianism myself often enough to not really, that I don't really like jumping to that conclusion. I like I like giving people the benefit of the doubt. So yeah. Face Punch Free Games Mega Thread. Not familiar with that. Face Punch, is that a forum or what? I've heard of that. I don't know what it is. How is it possible to not like The Witness? Yeah, I don't know. But it's very common. It's extremely common. It's such a love it or hate it type of game, which, that to me is a signal that it's a great game. That's a really special game, Okay, so back to the question, different topic, but I never understand how you guys who are so obsessed with the details of games don't make games. So first of all, I have made games before. I haven't released them because I'm the type of person who doesn't like to put things out unless they're at a certain level of quality, and they were not at that level of quality. They were at the level of quality where, well, at least one of them was at the level of quality where some people would have said nice things about it and tried it, and I don't want to say something. I don't want to say something mean. I'm almost saying something mean about. Let me just say that artists have a tendency to gas each other up. They like. There's almost a toxic positivity sometimes where like you make something that's kind of okay, and everyone's like, this is amazing, blah blah blah. If you're in these kind of like artist circles. So it would have I didn't, for some reason, this stupid, this perfectly fine game that I thought was all right keeps becoming the target. And I was thinking about it too before you said that, to be clear. I was trying not to talk about that, but it just keeps coming up as the target of like all of this. Yeah. I just wish that people I just wish that people would be a little bit more honest sometimes. Anyway, yeah, I've made some games, some very small solo project type of games in the past, and so reason number one, which I learned from making those kinds of games and from aspiring to being a game designer for years, mostly in the background while I was doing other things, but vaguely in my head for years I thought I want to be a game designer. And after a lot of trying and thinking about why this is not working, I realized I don't like making games. I don't enjoy it at all. I don't enjoy programming, for starters, and I don't really enjoy a lot of parts of game design. I feel like I'm the stereotypical ideas guy. And that's just not a real role. And yeah. So that's one reason why I don't make games. Number two is I actually think that right now, what I'm currently doing, sitting here and talking to you guys, is actually more needed maybe than another person making great games. Because I think there are a lot of great games coming out. And if you disagree with that, well, that's where my role comes in. Because it's true that no one knows about the great games that are coming out, and not a lot of people appreciate them. And that's exactly why something like a critic or a curator or something is more needed, because is especially needed right now, because people just don't know where to look to find the most interesting games that are coming out. Like, people just don't know about Derelict Star. Like, how many people know about Derelict Star? Probably some people in the chat right now still don't know about Derelict Star. And I've been talking about it nonstop for weeks. And it was like this. It was like this last year as well. Like, even stuff like Ooh kind of broke into the mainstream, but even something like Sectori, like that game. I mean, critics were pushing Sectori more than you would expect them to, but it still could use a lot more attention, a lot more someone amplifying that game, and putting that game out there, giving that game some kind of boost and more eyes on it somehow. And even a more popular game like Baby Steps was pretty popular, right? But like, a lot of people who are in certain bubbles, even people who are really into games, maybe didn't get as much of a push from anyone that they listen to or anyone that they talk to play Baby Steps, because they didn't get very much of a push to play Baby Steps because it's not in their normal wheelhouse. It's not the type of thing they normally play. And like, there's just not a good like curation and critical ecosystem in games right now. Like that to me is much more lacking than the actual games, the actual game designers. I think there are great game designers actively working on projects right now and and regularly releasing stuff. Like, I think the last 10 years of video game releases are my favorite 10 years in the history of video games. I think game design does not need very much help right now. I mean, that's not exactly true, but I also think that my ideas about game design, I can try to help spread those through what I'm doing right now as well. There are developers listening to me right now, and I think if I think that I can change anything by making a game, then surely I can also change something by just talking. I don't know. Yeah, it seems obvious to me that a lot of people would benefit from more critics who really know what they're talking about out there. But that's that, I think. And by the way, related to that, I was going to maybe we should jump straight into this actually, because one thing I wanted to do today. So, if you've been watching the stream, yeah, monetizing is harder, and that's exactly why. Like that's 100% the reason why good critics are lacking, because it's much harder to make money regardless of how much you compromise on the vision, right? Like to me, if I were to make a game and try to make money, that would be very hard because I struggle to make the right compromises, and the things that I like are very like hardcore and niche and experimental. So it would be very hard for me to thread the needle and kind of like appeal to a big enough audience to make a living doing that, while also doing something that I'm happy with, making something that I'm happy with and that I'm motivated to actually make. But regardless of how much you compromise, I think it's easier in game development right now than it is in game criticism to make a living. And I think I'm in a good place right now to at least try and see where we can get, and I can at least make some amount of make some kind of an impression on people, and have some kind of positive outcomes, even if this doesn't work out and I can't do it long term. But I am trying right now to figure out how to balance it so that I can reach a much wider audience and help. I'm not necessarily saying that I'll reach a wider audience for the stream. So here, let me just let you in on how I'm thinking about the stream right now. I'm thinking about what I'm doing. So what I was doing up until this week is doing the stream every week, and then trying to turn part of that stream into YouTube content, right? Into YouTube videos that stand alone well. And every week I was trying to do at least one segment that I thought would turn into a good YouTube video that would have a chance of hitting a somewhat wider audience, right? So like on stream, I let myself talk about whatever I want to talk about, and I kind of assume that that you guys are going to be able to follow because you're the more hardcore audience, right? Or the audience who's more familiar with my taste and things like that. But yeah, I'm trying to grow the audience, and so yeah, I mean, talking skills is hard. I'm definitely not the best at talking, and I'm trying to focus on that to some degree, but there's only so much you can do. But that's related to what I'm saying. So that's what I've been doing. What I'm doing now, starting this week, what I'm kind of pivoting to is the stream is just going to be the stream, and I'm just going to do whatever I want on the stream. Whatever I am interested in, whatever topics I think are most interesting. And then I'm going to just do the YouTube videos as a separate thing. So I'm going to record those. They're still going to be very low effort compared to most YouTube videos. Like I'm not going to have crazy editing. First of all, the audience that I'm looking for, even though I'm looking for I'm trying to build a bigger audience right now and trying to bring in more people. I'm trying to bring in people who get it. I'm trying to bring in the right type of people. And I do think there's a decent number of people out there who haven't found my YouTube videos yet, who would get it and are not this kind of like ADHD needing to be stimulated constantly with crazy editing type of person. Like, so anyway, yeah, they're going to almost be like stream videos in terms of like, I'm going to be recording them mostly in one rambly take, but I'm going to take a little bit more time and try to make the delivery a little bit smoother. Because I do think that matters a lot for YouTube, but also that's just going to let me have the stream be the stream, like I said. And it's also going to let the YouTube video be the YouTube video. Like I can maybe address a slightly more casual audience a little bit more directly without worrying about boring the people who are who are like here right now, you know? Yeah, but I'm talking even lower effort than that. I'm talking like almost podcast, like what I'm doing right now. Like I like at most having the equivalent of like a slideshow that I'm going through as I'm talking, you know? Not I don't want to be putting graphics or even editing pictures into the videos, at least not very often, like or very much. Like I think I want this to be talking about games, and yeah, I don't want it to feel like, yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking about a lot of different things, but that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm trying to remember why I got onto this because anyway, oh yeah. The reason that I got onto this is because I was going to ask. this can be the next topic here. I wanted to ask because I'm planning on making the first video that I'm going to do that's going to be straight to YouTube. I'm thinking about basically doing recommendations. I'm not exactly sure what the title and stuff is going to be for this yet, but some kind of like recommendations, maybe like 5 to 10 recommendations to kind of bridge the gap between mainstream games and the types of games that I'm talking about, right? And we were talking about this in the Discord a little bit recently. Yeah. I mean, the makes no money thing, like I'm just trying whatever I can. Like I'm just my assumption right now, or my hope, I guess, is that people just haven't tried enough different things, and if I experiment enough and see what seems to be working and iterate enough, then I can maybe find something that works well enough for me to be happy about. So anyway, I'm not even thinking about like monetization exactly yet right now because it feels like a waste of time when I don't have nearly a large enough audience yet. So I'm just focusing on seeing if I can get a big enough audience. But yeah, so for this first video that's going to be straight to YouTube, I think I want to do something like recommendations that are kind of trying to get people into what I think of as more serious, or I hate using the word art here, and I don't really know. This is why I don't exactly know how to frame this yet. But moving people toward the types of games that I think are interesting, or let's just say strange games, right? Since we had a discussion about that. I haven't posted the YouTube video yet, but if you were here last week on the stream, you remember the talk about strange games. Just games that are different and unique and interesting. So I'm curious I have a few in mind, but I'm curious what games you think work really well as kind of gateways to the kind of games that we generally talk about and get excited about on this stream. And that can be your personal favorites as well, but just try to think about like the ones that are really interesting and unique. Like someone, for example, brought up Treasure games, the Treasure catalog on a previous stream. Those are not my favorite games, but I would totally consider them within the ballpark of like, unique, interesting, artistic in some sense kind of stuff. So for example, a game that comes to mind, let me switch to, I didn't really bring up anything specific, but I opened backlogs so that we can look at some of the more popular stuff, right? I haven't played it yet, but I think that Silksong especially, maybe Hollow Knight as well, but I think that Silksong especially seems to do some stuff in its action design that is, it's obviously a very approachable game, but it also seems to do some stuff in its design that's kind of easing people in, maybe not easing in enough for some people, but it's kind of moving toward what I would think of as deep action game design, where there's some stuff that people think of as unfair, right? There's like the attack patterns are not always consistently forecasted in the way that you expect in like a Souls-like, and there's like additional enemies coming in the boss fight in a way that can feel kind of bullshit, but like you can figure out how to manage it, blah blah blah. You have to think about, oh, did he really? I actually missed that. I was gonna say that as well, Caitlin. Well, yeah, I'll get to that. Okay, so that's if both if both the Electric Underground and I agree on something regarding video game taste, then it's probably just has to be true, because probably has to be straightforwardly true, because I don't agree with that guy super often. not that I dislike him. I enjoy his videos, but yeah. So that seems like kind of a no-brainer. Hollow Knight and then Silksong you could make as a recommendation. And I mean that's those games are mainstream enough that it's not necessarily a useful recommendation for my video, but then again, maybe I should be making some that people are a little more familiar with, so that they trust what I'm saying a little bit more. I don't know. I'll figure that out. But so there's that. I think that's like a good starting point for action game design if you're coming from like Souls-likes and stuff. I do think Celeste. I mean, most people. I don't really know iceberg video about levels of good video game taste. Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Yeah, so Celeste. By the way, I'm looking at the top on backlog. This does not have to be pulling from the top of backlog, and I'm going to get into some ideas for games that are absolutely not on the top of backlogged. But this is just. I mostly open this not to give me ideas for games to recommend, but to give me ideas of what people are playing nowadays, right? Because I didn't grow up in this era of games. Like someone who's, let's say, like 18 now, or like in their early 20s now, like they grew up on a completely different set of games than I did. But I feel like the backlogged audience is much more in line with what I'm kind of targeting here, right? So this is giving me an idea of what people are already familiar with, and what is the mainstream that we're trying to shift people away from. Not that all these games are bad or anything. So, but yeah, Celeste, I guess I'm just wondering, like, have people, I guess if you can't handle Celeste, like what I'm thinking is Celeste is actually kind of hard sometimes for a mainstream gamer, I would think. I've seen Thor High Heels. Yeah, he doesn't recommend he doesn't really talk about the kind of games that I typically get excited about, but maybe I should give it another look. It's been a while. But yeah, so Celeste, doesn't it get kind of hard sometimes? I guess it's really hard to pin down. Part of what makes this difficult is it's hard to pin down like exactly the skill level, like what is the average Breath of the Wild player's skill level at platformers? Like when you give the average Breath of the Wild player Celeste, how does that go? I really don't have a good idea. I feel like it might actually be too painful. It might be too frustrating. Then again, part of what I'm probably going to be doing in this video is recommending a kind of mindset, and making more specific recommendations about how to think about these games and approach these games, and try not to get frustrated by trying the same thing over and over again type of thing. But the average Breath of the Wild player's experience with Celeste is going to be very different from the average Among Us player's experience with Celeste is going to be very different from the average Cyberpunk player's experience with Celeste. But I guess I'm just trying to think, like, what is like the when a relatively mainstream gamer plays Celeste for the first time, what is in their head as like what are they relating that to? Like, have they played Mario? Do people play like 2D Mario? I guess they still play 2D Mario. Mario Maker is pretty big, right? Or is Mario? I don't know. Is Mario Maker kind of niche? So like that's kind of what I'm wondering about. But I guess 3D platformer experience also kind of translates to some degree. Yeah, it's just really hard for me to conceptualize this kind of thing. But yeah, I do feel like Celeste, if we're talking about like how do you get the average gamer from where they are to a place where they can appreciate something like Derelict Star, which is a pretty tricky and weird and difficult platformer. I think Celeste is somewhere on that path. I'm just wondering if there is maybe another recommendation that needs to come before that. Like if you've literally never played a platformer before, you should maybe play blank and then play Celeste and then play Derelict Star. And even that seems like a little bit fast. Like I'm thinking like Super Meat Boy maybe somewhere in there, or like the Super Meat Boy, or like what else? Yeah, do we have like a genre list platform? Okay, so these are the top platformers of all time. And here's something interesting to think about. Like playing Hollow Knight, there's platforming in that game. It's not very hard platforming most of the time, I don't think, but it's getting you better. If you're really bad at platformers, you're going to be a lot better by the time you finish Hollow Knight and Hollow Knight Silksong. So yeah, it's just interesting trying to imagine the route that someone would take to getting deeper into games. So obviously Cuphead feels a little too niche. Like is the average gamer really getting through Cuphead? I guess I have to decide who exactly I'm targeting here, which is part of the problem that I'm having. Like I should probably target someone who's I should probably target the Elden Ring audience. I should imagine my imagine my typical audience for this video being like the people on Twitter who get really mad about Elden Ring, or maybe they're not get really mad, but you know, they're always excited to talk about Elden Ring. Recommending something that's well known, but asking them to try to go deep into the scoring. That's totally valid. Yes, totally valid. Go deep into one of Kamiya's games. So here's what I think is hard about Kamiya's games. Well, you know, like Bayonetta is a you get to see my ratings. Bayonetta is it has pretty broad appeal because you can play on the easier difficulties and just kind of get through it, right? And it's very flashy. There's a lot of spectacle kind of appeal. To get really good at it, though, it's actually there's a way in which Kamiya games in general are a lot more frustrating to get good at compared to a lot of difficult games that are less open-ended. Like Bayonetta just has so many different weapons that you could be using. It has so many different moves, so many different strings, like attack combos and stuff like that. It has, and a lot of the most important mechanics are so subtle, like the dodge offset is so subtle, and it's so essential to appreciating the game that it's kind of, the game doesn't do a good job of pushing you to get better. I think kind of a mandatory thing if you're going to get deeper into games is coming to terms with the fact that games, you know, more casual players are often uncomfortable with this, but I think it's kind of mandatory to accept the fact that games are going to block your progress, because blocking your progress is what, not completely block your progress, but prevent you from doing something in alternate, you know, prevent you from like missing the point and still getting through it, right? Like Celeste has basically 0%, ignoring the assist mode. Celeste has basically 0% like, oh, I kind of didn't really do this the right way or the most fun way, but I like figured out how to do it. Bayonetta has like a lot of that, like a fumbling around, and yeah, Wonderful 101 is probably better in that area, but it still has that Kamiya vibe. Like it will let you, you know, it will let you. It's been forever since I played Wonderful 101. I really need to go back and actually go deeper on that game because I've only really done one playthrough. Jacob, thanks for the resub, man. Really appreciate that. Tier 3. The GOAT. Yeah, it's also just a pretty complicated and weird game. I think Wonderful 101 would be more in the deep end for what I'm talking about, where that's where I'm trying to get people to. I'm trying to bridge the gap between Elden Ring type of vibe and something like Wonderful 101, which as we can see from Matthew Matosis is a favorite game of all time for some people who are really deep into games, you know? Stuff like the Wonderful 101, stuff like Rain World, stuff like The Witness, stuff like Cinco Paws, stuff like treasure games, I guess, stuff like yeah, you get what I'm saying. The stuff like Derelict Star, stuff like Baby Steps, stuff that's very special in a kind of way. There's nothing else like it. You're having an amazing experience. And not that you can't have that kind of amazing experience with something like Celeste, but I do think it's more interchangeable with other games. Like the experience that you have with Celeste is not as unique. It's kind of a really well-honed platformer experience that does a lot of different things, but there are a lot of different things that other games do as well, and games have been doing for a long time, and you can get a lot of the same flavors from other games instead, you know? And yeah, I think that's a lot of why people underrate Celeste, actually, is that they've just played a lot of platformers before, and so when they played Celeste when that came out, they were like, yeah, whatever, it's fun. It was fine. And to be clear, that's how I felt as well. Let's see what I rated it. Yeah, so you know, I liked it, but I didn't think it was the greatest thing ever. So yeah, my point is to try to get people to the point where they can more easily appreciate some of the really crazy stuff that's happening in games that I think is amazing, and I think that more people would like to experience. So yeah, another one I was thinking about is Slay the Spire, but the more I think about this, the more I think that that kind of stuff is a little too mainstream, and maybe even Celeste is a little too mainstream. I don't know, because like Slay the Spire, I do think is a good game. If you haven't played a lot of strategy games before, I do think it is a really, really good game. And I like that it goes so deep, right? I like that the difficulty eventually gets completely insane. So it's a good one to get into to kind of push yourself and try to get more skilled at this type of strategic thinking. And it really applies to the skills that you build in Slay the Spire apply to any kind of strategy game to some degree, but especially stuff that has, like, you know, you're making a build and you're building your character over time in response to what you're seeing. Like, maybe not in response to what you're seeing, but that's me thinking about Cinco Paws specifically. But yeah, you know, Slay the Spire. If I'm trying to think about how to get people into Cinco Paws, which is, I'm gonna be honest, that's a large part of my real goal. Let me just throw the goat up on the screen for a second. If I'm trying to think about, look at that, man, that is just beautiful. This is so beautiful. Shout out all the homies haven't even rated it, bro. The homies have not even rated it except one. Shout out 13 people who rated this 5 stars. Anyway, if I'm trying to get people into this, it's just Slay the Spire is a great starting point for multiple reasons. It's a great starting point because the better you get at it, the more you have to. The main reason is the better you get at it, the more you have to think about randomness and explicitly think about all of the different branching possibilities ahead of you, right? Like when you first play Slay the Spire, you're kind of just strategizing around what is in front of you right now. But the better you get at it, the more you think about, okay, what are all of the possible cards? Like when you're choosing a card to potentially add to your deck, when you're deciding whether to add a card to your deck, let's say, you're not just thinking about this card that's in front of you and your deck, which is already in front of you. You're thinking about all of the other cards that it could potentially synergize with that you could run into and have the opportunity to choose later, and all of the ways that you might run into, and like what are the odds that you're going to run into those types of things. And you're thinking about all of the enemies that you are potentially going to have to go up against later in this run. You know, you're thinking about the unknown future, and you're thinking probabilistically or whatever, in a way that doesn't come naturally to people, and it's so unnatural to casual gamers sometimes that you hear stuff like, you hear people talking about like bullshit RNG, right? Or people blaming RNG, and often you hear that in a situation where you're like, as an experienced player, if you see what they're talking about, you're often like, you should have 100% been ready for that. Like you should have 100% anticipated that this boss was going to do this random attack, because it's like a 50% chance in that scenario. Like you have to thinking about games in this way that lets you handle that kind of RNG, it requires you to take a more abstract view of the game. It requires you to take a step back from what is literally on your screen right now and understand the whole possibility space and understand everything and link it together in your head and in a way that lets you think about it functionally, right? And most people just don't have that. It's not that they don't have the capacity, it's just that they're not in the habit of doing that, of thinking about games that way, because most mainstream games don't make them do that. And so Slay the Spire, I think, is really good for training that. I think it's like an essential starting point kind of game. I don't know of a better place to go first for strategy kind of games for that reason. Of course you can get there other ways, but yeah. Let me catch up on the chat before I talk about other stuff. Path of Pain. Wait, what's Path of Pain? Is that a... Actually, I have no idea what that is. Is it something in Hollow Knight? I really don't know. It sounds familiar. Baby Steps might be on that path just because it's a really funny game. Yeah, I think Baby Steps is really admirable for how well it appeals to both me and the more mainstream player. I think it actually works a lot better when you have to really struggle with it quite a bit. I think it's the rare, quote unquote, strange game that actually doesn't work quite as well for someone like me who's too deep in it, right? I think the game was too easy for me to have its full impact. Not that it should be insane, not that it should be painfully hard, but it should be a struggle and really feel like an accomplishment, I think. But yeah, it's really admirable how, like, compared to like getting over it, it's crazy that I think Baby Steps is better both for me and for the average player than Getting Over It is. I think it's a better game for almost everyone. I think it's a really, really impressive piece of work. Hollow Knight platformer section. I see. Yeah. The one where you go into like a different world and stuff. Yeah, that was weird. Celeste DLC was a lot more challenging. If people jump into that, it might get them closer to other games. Yeah, I can make specific recommendations about like how deep you should go, maybe. I don't know. Resident Evil Mercenaries and Dark Souls put you on the trajectory to get into those unique games. I do think Dark Souls is interesting. When I think about recommending Dark Souls, it's tricky because most people's experience with FromSoft at this point is with the later era FromSoft, which has a kind of appeal that is so different from the Dark Souls 1 appeal that it's like they're already primed incorrectly. It's like they're already, the exact wrong mindset, not the exact wrong mindset, but a not very good mindset for approaching Dark Souls 1 is already ingrained in their mind from playing so many hours of Dark Souls 3 and Elden Ring and Sekiro. And like, it's kind of hard to fight that. You're kind of fighting an uphill battle by trying to get people in the right mindset to appreciate something like Dark Souls 1. Which is sad, because Dark Souls 1 is the most special of those games, I think. So yeah, I might avoid it for that reason as a recommendation. Yeah, I was thinking about The End Is Nigh as well. Yeah, it's definitely a good option. It's I don't, my memory of most of that game is not very strong, but I think the main game is really not that difficult. I remember playing that game for a lot of hours, but I think the vast majority of it was like the crazy like arcade game optional things and stuff. You have a journey going from Dark Souls to Kamiya games to Ninja Gaiden, then to shmups. Yeah, I think that's probably not too uncommon, something like that. But yeah, that's, no, that's good to know. But I do think some things are a lot smoother than others to get into. I mean, here's a question. Like, when you got into Kamiya games, did you play them just blind? And like, did you, because I really do feel like Kamiya games, and this is true of a lot of like arcade inspired games and arcade games in general, I feel like they often work better when you know some things about them. Like when you look up, maybe not look it up, probably not from the beginning, like not at the beginning, but once you've played through the game once or twice, I think it often makes sense to like watch someone's one credit clear of a shmup or something and try to get some idea of how a better player plays, which is very not unnatural. Like, that's not something that a casual gamer would really think to do. Okay, Matthew's recommendation videos where he does talk about like how to play the games. Yeah, maybe I could shout out some videos like that though in my own video. I don't know. What else did I write down that I was thinking about? Okay, here's something. I'm curious how many of you guys have even played this, but the fact that it's a little bit less well known makes me think it's a better recommendation, actually. I like this game a lot. I rated it at 7 out of 10, just like all these other games I've been showing, but I do like it a lot. I honestly feel like I should have rated it an 8 out of 10. I might change it right now. Should I change it? I'm changing it. Okay, I like this game a lot. It's and it's let me just pull up. Just pull up some footage so you guys know. Full playthrough, no commentary. So I'll just skip a little bit. It's what's interesting is it's an avoidance game. It's like basically a pure avoidance game. But it feels to me so much more approachable than a shmup, and it feels like it eases you in so much more naturally, and it also feels I feel like to a more mainstream gamer it would feel more there's something if I were to give someone this game, right, which is my favorite avoidance game. I'm gonna mute the tab and play it. If I were to show someone this, there's just a sense of, even for like a hardcore shmup player, I feel like the natural assumption is this is not This is not a serious game, right? Like this is not ever going to be an all-time classic or whatever. This is like it just doesn't have the air of quality to it, right? Can't play it while I'm talking. Whereas this, it's a little bit more polished the way they have come to expect. It has a little bit more like obvious variety that's going to keep them interested, right? It's easier to play for very long sessions and, you know, get hooked on compared to something like Angel Game. But yeah, at the same time, it's not super intimidating. Like the time requirements to move on from each level are pretty lax. You know, it encourages you to like beat the dev times by going way above and beyond. It also has like, but the times to move forward are pretty lax, and you don't have to beat every room as soon as you encounter it. Blah blah blah. There's also like a little bit of variety in terms of there's some kind of puzzly like secrets type of appeal, but it's like not crazy hard or anything. So yeah, I feel like this is a really good recommendation, but at the same time, this game didn't do that well. I mean, let's see how it did on Steam. It didn't sell that well, I don't think. It has 1,000 reviews. So yeah, that's has 1,000 reviews and they're all very positive. So yeah, maybe it's a good recommendation. It also has gore. Yeah, gamers love gore. This game's RNG is so atrocious. I mean, look, I don't think it's the greatest like score chasing, you know, when you get to the point where you're like optimizing, really pushing for a high score or whatever. Oh, do you mean Angel Game? Maybe you mean Angel Game. Yeah. It's not a big problem for me, right? Like obviously, since it's one of my favorite games of all time, it's not a very big problem. I do wish it were different, right? But I also recognize that it would require complicating the design in some way to make that happen. But yeah, I actually think it's much less of a big deal than people act like it is, just because it's such a short run. Like it doesn't, like how much does it really matter? Okay, I know that some people find it very frustrating anytime that they die to bad luck. So let me just say that that's not my experience. When I die to bad luck, I just press the space bar and continue playing, right? Like because Angel Game is a game that lets you get right back into it, and you were immediately playing the game again, and you were immediately playing the best part of the game again, right? It's not like a cave game where you have to go through 3 stages that are kind of easy before you get back to the hard part where you maybe died to bad luck. Like it's not like that. It's just like you get right back into the best part of the game immediately. The whole game is the best part of the game, and there's no downtime, whether you die or not. So that to me means it's not frustrating. So this is why I'm not saying that you should think that it's the greatest game ever made. I'm just explaining why that aspect is not a problem for me. And in terms of like competition, you know, comparing your score, your best time to other people's best times, I do think it is a bit of a problem. It's not ideal, but I do think it's not nearly as bad as people act like it is, just because it's such a short run. You're going to grind hundreds of attempts if you're trying for a serious high score. So the RNG tends to even out pretty well over 100 attempts or 1,000 attempts, right? Yeah, of course you can have a crazy outlier, but like, just if you look at a normal, like, yeah, I think if you look at the distribution of like what would be a really good time on this particular seed, you plot that on a graph, you plot that for like 1,000 seeds. I think it's going to even out pretty nicely, where like if you're playing consistently enough, you're going to get a PB that's pretty representative of your skill after like 100 runs or whatever. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. It doesn't bother me that much, is what I'm saying. But the main reason I just like it is just because it's a great game. Like, moment to moment, it is a really interesting game. Anyway, there are a lot of shmups that are easier to approach in the avoidance aspect. Not everything is bullet hell. Yeah, but how focused are they on the avoidance? Like, I actually kind of feel like the avoidance in classic shmups is a little bit too simple or something. And also, I kind of feel like the game overall is not focused enough on that. Like, there's too much. To me, I know people like this, but to me, there's just too much routing and stuff, right? There's just too much stuff that gets trivialized once you've done it a couple times and you remember where things are going to spawn. There's too much time spent not doing the dodging. Like, if I'm trying to pick game recommendations that are really going to build these skills and get people to appreciate a particular style of gameplay, right? Something like this is kind of better because they're constantly doing the dodging. They're constantly doing pure avoidance, right? Whereas, if I gave them something like R-Type or something, like, I don't know what games you're thinking about. I'm curious what games you're thinking about. But if I give them a classic shmup and they try to get good at it, a lot of that time is not really going to be watching the bullets and trying to project where they're moving to and trying to get out of the way of those paths and trying to route your way through them, Whereas this game is kind of all that. Yeah, Toho is another thing that Toho is another one that I was thinking about. It feels like I kind of feel like if it were just the bosses, it would be a better recommendation though. But maybe that's just me. Like, when I play Toho, I just want to get to the bosses mostly. There are some moments, but overall the stages are not that exciting. And this could vary. I've only even tried a couple of Toho games. I've only cleared one on Lunatic. Yeah. It's easy to get mesmerized watching watching avoidance gameplay. So what else? Yeah, I found Beautiful Joe hard to get into as a kid, but I liked it. Undertale, yes. Undertale, very important to mention at least, because that's an avoidance game, 100%. Well, not 100%, as in 100% of the game is avoidance. Obviously, there's like talking to skeletons and stuff, and reading stupid jokes, but 100%, a large chunk of that game is definitely avoidance. So it's worth at least mentioning. Devil Daggers 2 featuring Dick Dagger. Yeah, okay. I forgot to address actual Devil Daggers above. Someone else mentioned it. Yeah, Devil Daggers. I'm not sure how that really goes. I hesitate to recommend anything that's not, or anything that's like arcade format, static spawns over a decently long run and doesn't have a practice mode built in. Like Devil Daggers, the fact that it doesn't just let you jump to, for example, the Gigapedes, or the part where like 2 spiders or 3 spiders spawn all at once, these parts that people get hung up on, like the fact that there's no built-in way to jump to those parts makes me hesitate to recommend it. I guess I wonder what is a good FPS recommendation, a good kind of getting into FPS recommendation. I almost feel like Doom 1 is kind of a good recommendation, even though there's a good bit of like running around looking for keys or whatever. Ultra Kill, that's very possible. I haven't played that yet. And someone else, you said something else that I haven't played yet. What did you play? Or what did you say? You said Balatro. Okay, we're kind of jumping around all around genres, but that's fine. Balatro before Slay the Spire. I do think Slay the Spire is very approachable. So I don't necessarily think anything needs to go before Slay the Spire in the route. But there's some light elements where you want to consider upcoming events like boss blinds. It's having you consider when you want to pivot your strategy from short-term econ to long-term scoring, etc. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that makes me think also about a lot of like board games, like Dominion, or I'm sure it's a very common type of thing that shows up in board games. But I guess I can't really assume any board game experience if I'm trying to talk to like a typical mainstream gamer. I don't know if I can really assume any board game experience. What's up, Sam? Yeah, it's just a pain in Devil Daggers when you feel like you have to grind out the early game quite a bit. And I want to try to be rigorous with these recommendations because I'm rigorous with the games that I like. At least, like, my taste at least has very low tolerance for downtime, right? And so I would like to recommend stuff that's also very low downtime. Yeah, you're probably right that everyone is good at FPS. I think that's probably less true nowadays, though, than it was like 10, 20 years ago. Because if you think about... I'm trying to think of like a single player mainstream FPS, like truly mainstream, because like, the Sony slop games. I mean, Returnal is a shooter, I guess. And people seemed to do okay with that, but it also didn't sell nearly as many copies, and it inherently was working with a more hardcore audience because it was working with the people who bought a PS5 like day one or whatever. But yeah, the mainstream games that are more focused on gameplay these days, the most mainstream ones are like Souls-likes. I guess the Battle Royale, like when Battle Royales were really big, people more so could be expected to be at least a little bit familiar with FPS. But I also wonder how many people played a decent amount of Battle Royale, spent a decent amount of time with Battle Royales, and never really developed basic aiming and like, basic FPS skills. Because it's very easy to play Battle Royales in a way where like 1% of the game is like real gameplay almost. Like you're just hanging out with your friends and you run around and you're looting, and then after 15 minutes of running around, you are forced to fight another squad and you die. And it's like a 20-second fight. I wonder how many people play Battle Royales that way and never really develop the skills. But yeah, Ultra Kill maybe? I don't know. Yeah, some Battle Royales do a better job than others of encouraging you to fight more, but they never force it. They rarely like really force you to go out of your way to fight. And yeah, I think a lot of players just want to play those games to hang out with their friends. So yeah, I am curious. I'm curious what the normal, like, what kind of FPS experience I should be expecting. Jumps to Ultra Kill just as a kind of like getting people into the space where they can appreciate more creative aesthetic decisions. I see. Yeah, maybe I should try Ultra Kill before this, because that's an interesting idea. What else? Were there other suggestions? Have I played Fury? I've played Fury, yeah. That could be an okay action game suggestion, but I kind of feel like it largely works in the same way. The thought processes behind good Fury play are largely the same as like good Souls-like play, It's pretty reactive. Yeah. I'm not sure how much of Fury's gameplay is really bringing anything, is like adding a new element that would be pushing people into new territory here, rather than just giving them what they're already familiar with. Realm of the Mad God. I've heard of it. I don't really know much about it. What's my favorite cave game? So I haven't played Ketsui yet, and I think I might like that the most. There's a couple others that I haven't played, but of what I've played, my favorite is just OG Dodonpachi. But the way that I like to play cave games is not really the intended way necessarily. I don't know. Who's to say what the intended way is, but I'm definitely not the target audience for cave games. I get my bullet dodging from Angel Game. But yeah, I admire the artistry and the creativity behind cave games quite a bit. Mushi is up there for me. Yeah, I haven't played DOJ, but the thing is, for me, original Dodonpachi was a difficulty level that made it so that I didn't really have to grind it that much, or like intentionally, like consciously try to route that much. I'm just such a big hater. I'm just such a big hater of like grinding out practice and routing and stuff like that. So like Dodonpachi was a difficulty for me that I could, do a reasonable number of attempts and get the 1cc, the 1-all, before it got old. Whereas I kind of feel like DOJ, even though it looks great for what it is, like I just worry that it's going to be a little too hard for me to approach in that kind of way. Dodonpachi is too much routing heavy comparing to DOJ and Ketsui. Well, it depends on your skill level and it depends on what your goal is, right? Like routing heavy for a 1-all is very different from, how routing heavy Dodonpachi is for a 1-all is very different from how routing heavy it is for score chasing. And then it also, it depends on just how you approach it. Like I said, I didn't go out of my way to route it at all, and I didn't feel like I really needed to at any point. Whereas DOJ, it's just, I feel like it's hard enough that I'm going to have to. I wish those ports were on Steam as well. I was thinking about Spelunky. I don't know. I kind of feel like Spelunky is getting closer to the deep end, where it's kind of just a unique thing that, like, I mean, what is that preparing you for, I guess? Being careful. I guess that's important. It's teaching you how to be really cautious. I guess that's good priming for Cinco Plus. So yeah, it needs to be on the list. Dusk. Yeah, I think Dusk. Okay. I haven't played it. But the reason I haven't played it is because I suspect it's very overrated. Or at least I suspect that people like it for the vibes and the level design, but not in a gamey way, like the level design in the sense of this is a cool level to move through and just see what's going on, what's in here and stuff. I question how well it really works. In terms of like the pure gameplay. CS and Valorant. Yeah, I kind of wish. I think it's I don't necessarily want to put any esports on this list. I think that's first of all, that's kind of appealing to a very different audience, and but yeah, you're just talking about you're just talking about what people have already played. Yeah, but yeah, I am thinking that that's kind of a different audience than what I'm imagining. Like the main person I'm imagining for the recommendations that I'm trying to come up with right now is like, they mostly play single player stuff. They've played a lot of like Souls-likes and open world games and things like that, and like maybe RPGs or something, but they are open-minded and interested in, getting into other stuff. Tower Climb. I tried that game. Should I play that game? The LMFAO makes me think no. But I tried that game many years ago, and I don't think I got very far. I think I might have played it for like less than an hour. You highly suspect Tower Climb is very good? Damn. Okay. Okay, maybe I should try it. Anyway, yeah, I do think if you have decent FPS experience, then Post Void is a good recommendation. But again, it's not. I'm trying to ideally find recommendations that automatically work, right? They automatically work with no additional caveats, no additional clarification needed from outside the game, right? And I think that if you're even all right at FPS games, you don't even have to be like too good, like good, really good at FPS games. If you're even all right at FPS games, the kind of natural experience for most people with Post Void is you play it for a couple hours and beat it, and you see that there are no more achievements on Steam, and you stop playing. So you definitely have to clarify the score, the fact that score chasing is where the game really opens up and the game really shines. And you have to maybe explain the scoring system in the video, which, yeah. I think there's more people than you think who are semi-stuck, playing mostly mainstream stuff because that's what people talk about in the circles that they are in and on the sites that they read, and on the parts of Twitter that they're on, and on the, I don't know where people are looking these days. Are people reading forums? I don't know. Wherever people get their information about games, they see mostly mainstream stuff, and so they get semi stuck in the way that I was stuck for many years when I was younger, and just don't really ever fully break out. Don't ever fully realize that there's much more interesting stuff that they could be playing, despite being open-minded enough. Zero Ranger is your favorite intro to shmups. I suspect it's a good one. Even though it did not click with me. Do you think there'd be a big value add if the devs added an achievement for a high score? I think so. But I think the bigger value add, maybe? Well, there's just so much low-hanging fruit in that game. It's kind of crazy. And I mean, this is why I wrote... No, number 1, let's go. Maybe that's just because... No, I'm not logged in. Okay. That's why I wrote this, right? Well, I mean, I originally wrote my essay about it on Substack, but I then adapted it as a Steam guide, and people seem to be appreciating it. People were... Oh, Discord link is not working. This person seems to be appreciating it, right? Who can read Chinese? Anyway, that's why I made this, because I feel like it's kind of needed. Like, these are kind of my ideas of like achievements, right? Like the game could have included these increasing difficulty goals for people as Steam achievements, and that would have been nice. And separately, though, I really think that it needed to explain more things in the game somewhere. Like, here's something that I have talked about before that I just never really see. Think about tutorials in games, right? Like a hardcore game, there's kind of two types of hardcore games when it comes to tutorials. There's the hardcore games, like a lot of fighting games and stuff, where they front load you with an insane number of tutorials that's overwhelming, and if you go straight into that before playing the game very much, you're just going to be confused, and you kind of have to come back to that later and see if you're missing anything if you really want to, or just learn another way. Like, I don't feel like those kind of tutorials do the best job. Let's just put it that way. And then the other type of like kind of hardcore competitive game is the one that doesn't really explain anything to you and maybe expects you to learn by watching other people play or learn by just talking to other people or just bang your head against the wall until you figure it out. I feel like the normal thing that most competitive games should do, whether that's, you know, an online multiplayer competitive game or whether that's like a score chasing single player game or whatever, the normal thing is secret tutorials, right? Or unlockable tutorials where at some point, and I mean, you can think of Celeste as kind of doing this, even though it's not this kind of game that I'm talking about. I'm more talking about the game where you play the same mode over and over again, not like a level-based game or whatever. But you know, Celeste at some point teaches you the tech. There's this core, very important tech in Celeste, and it explicitly teaches you once you've gotten to a certain point very deep in the game. And I just think that Post Void would really be served by explicitly explaining the scoring system after you beat the game for the first time, popping up a thing saying, this is how it works, this is generally how you should think about it. Pretty brief, you know, it doesn't have to be in depth, but like, you know, an unlockable tutorial. And then when you get to 100k, it can explain the you know, some of the tech, which I explain here. And when you get to, you know, maybe 100, you know, these numbers could be different, but like when you get to certain numbers, certain score thresholds, or when you have played the game enough times or whatever, whenever it thinks that you are ready for this information, it should give you the information at the time that you actually need it, right? Like, so that's what I try to do here as well. But I really feel like more games should do something like that. Secret tutorials. But yeah, if you play Post Void, check out the guide. And look at how autistic this gets, though. I mean, we really went in on this because I wanted to fully explain all of the like optimal tech. But again, like this, you don't want to show this to players in the first hour, right? Do not show this never show anything like this to me in the first hour of gameplay of anything. But I want to know it. Like I would have liked to not have had to figure this out myself by opening up the debug menu in the training mod and trial and erroring for hours, you know. But anyway, I solved all these problems for you by writing all of this. So if you play Post Void, which you should read this. Anyway, are we are we done with Star of Providence? Now that's, I kind of feel like I would say Binding of Isaac before Star of Providence. Some old iteration of Binding of Isaac, maybe. Like, yeah. I really need to play Thumper, by the way, as well. Yeah, Misa helped with the graphics. Binding of Isaac before Star of Providence, that's tough. Why do you think Binding of Isaac is hard to get into? Because that game went really mainstream. Both aren't optimal. Yeah. Well, so those graphs are for purely 2D. Like there's not very much vertical movement in Post Void. That's only to do with the on the ground movement, but yeah, you should play the game if you like unique score chasing games. But I don't know. What I remember of getting into Isaac when I was like 16 or something was that it was pretty smooth. And I remember being enticed by the structure of the game, like the fact that you're unlocking more stuff. Like I remember the meta progression working on me. And like not even unlocking more stuff as much as like there was this impression that, and I still like the kind of stuff like this impression that there is more to the game, you know, this impression that like the game is transforming as I get better at it and get through it. Like I get through it once and then I unlock like, additional floors and wait, now there's more, and there's more alternate floors for the beginning. Like the game is transforming and then eventually the game like gets harder, and like I just not knowing what was coming next. It's kind of a stupid, it's not like a amazing, elegant, like peeling back the layers like you get in something like The Witness, but it does have that feeling and I remember that enticing me when I was getting into it as a kid. So, which I guess a lot of roguelikes have. Like, I think Star of Providence does have that as well. I don't know. No, I'm interested in Mugenics. I'm actually planning on starting it very soon. I've just been honestly not playing games enough because I've been trying to figure out this channel and I've had other stuff going on. But yeah, I really want to go dive deep on that, and I am interested in that aspect specifically based on what rumors I've heard, what vague rumors I've heard. Fortunately have not been spoiled majorly on anything yet. Loved Super Meat Boy, didn't get that much into Rebirth at release, however the expansions really changed their mind. I kind of feel like Isaac peaked somewhere. The peak for me is like the Wrath of the Lamb and into Vanilla Rebirth kind of era. I'm trying to think what the first expansion was. Was the first expansion where they added Greed Mode? The first Rebirth expansion? Because I feel like that's kind of when they went off the rails. Not even, I mean, Greed Mode itself is kind of, feels like very much not the point of the game to me, but even more than that, like the items that they were adding at that point, I feel like the item pool just got polluted more and more and more. I don't know. And even more than that, actually, the boss design, the way that they started trying to intentionally counter the snowballing builds with like, didn't they like do weird stuff with the health pools so that bosses take more, they have more health when you're stronger and stuff like that. There's weird cheesy adaptive difficulty that I didn't like, or like yeah, I really did not like that. And it's not just that, it's like that's emblematic somehow of the entire design approach that they adopted like halfway through the life of Isaac. It's like Isaac was originally not that. I mean, maybe he meant for it to be that originally, at least more than it was, but it did not feel like that originally at all. It felt like you're going to have these runs that are really hard sometimes, and you're going to have these runs that go completely off the rails and are completely insane, and sometimes that makes it really easy. And that's fine. Like those two different things are interesting in their own ways, and it's not like you can see everything in the game, like fully complete the game without learning without seeing a lot of both of those modes, right? So it's fine. Whereas like, yeah, Isaac Redemption or whatever. Is it Redemption? Repentance. Yeah, it didn't sound right. Repentance, it just has this, general vibe of like, they don't want you to get too powerful. They want it to be balanced in some way, which just doesn't really work with that foundation of that game. Like, I don't know. I didn't play that much Repentance. Yeah, I was kind of off the train by that point. Yeah, the co-op is fine. I don't have a problem with the co-op. But yeah, I do think Isaac is a good kind of gateway game for what I'm talking about, because like let's just pull up some Binding of Isaac. I don't know. these are YouTube slop videos. I mean, maybe the fact that there's so many YouTube slop videos should indicate that it's too mainstream for what I'm doing. But I do feel like there is a younger audience who didn't really get into Isaac in the same way. Maybe, I don't know. Okay, let's just do this. We're not gonna listen to this guy. Sorry. I do think there's a significant amount of bullet dodging. Like, this is maybe more than bullet dodging. You're like manipulating and like thinking about where the enemy's moving. This is an avoidance game to a significant degree, I would say. And I think it works well enough as a gateway type of thing. Repentance was the best for you. That is very interesting to me as a fan from the early days. Now I'm just watching Isaac. Nicholas started taking on more of a dev role? Oh, I didn't realize that. I do know that Edmund was doing a million other things, like making board games and card games and whatever at some point. Yeah, the controls. Yeah, people complain a lot about the very slow bullets and stuff. But I don't know. I kind of feel like it's an interesting challenge in its own way, almost. Like, yeah, it's like a thing that you have to think about how you aim your bullets in a way that's like independent of your character, or it has a more complex relationship with your character's position compared to, most shmups. Pizza Tower is an example of learning to master games. I kind of feel like... So again, I haven't played Pizza Tower because it doesn't really seem like my kind of thing, but we're talking about a lot of these kind of routing heavy games, right? Like I know that Pizza Tower is very heavy on the routing, and I just kind of I question whether that's teaching something that they're not going to get from my other recommendations anyways. Like, when you get really deep into yeah, I don't know about the routing in particular, but I guess I just wonder to what degree that would come naturally. But I mean, if there's a really good example of a routing game, I guess what I would lean more towards is like, rather than, I don't know, maybe I just haven't played it enough. I was gonna say something like Neon White, because it has my impression is that it has a more creative style of routing, and it has really short levels. Whereas Pizza Tower kind of seems, I don't know. I don't know. Is the structure of Pizza Tower, like, does it encourage you to play? This is something I should just look into separately. I am curious whether it encourages you to play, like, through the whole game at once, or whether it encourages you to like grind one level at a time, like something like Neon White or Dust Force is more likely to get you to do. Pizza Tower feels like if learning a 2D Sonic game was a bit more actionable. Would recommend Neon White over it. Okay, that's good. That's my intuition, but yeah. I'm just so... Really, my feeling is that my feeling on routing in games is that it's usually just not necessary. Like, when I play a game that's like heavy on the routing, I pretty much always feel like they could have structured the game in a different way so that it didn't have that, and it would have made the game much more dense with the part that I like about it. And, maybe this is a very personal thing where I just don't vibe with this particular type of gameplay, and other people like it for some reason. But yeah, that's my feeling. And this is, this gets back to one of the biggest things that I harp on about, which is that arcade games are not random enough. Like I think arcade games are so well made, on average, compared to, like, let's say roguelites, which a lot of people describe as like the modern arcade games. I think arcade games are just so much better designed in general, and feel better, and you get they're just higher quality games in a certain objective sense most of the time. But I don't like them that much most of the time because they're so static. The level design is static. They're asking me to replay over and over again static levels that are, you over time it becomes much less reactive and much more about memorization and planning out a route. And planning out a route, you can think of that almost like a puzzle type of experience. And why would I not just be playing a good puzzle game instead? Right? At that point, if I'm going to be doing puzzly kind of routing, why wouldn't I just be playing a game that's actually designed to be a good puzzle game? So I feel like a lot more procedural generation is important. And what is that? I don't know if I've even seen that. A lot more. I want a lot more procedural generation in my arcade kind of games, which gets to why I like stuff like Angel Game and stuff like Post Void. I forget why I started saying this. Yeah. So yeah, I guess in general, I question how much routing is really even necessary to learn to get to all of the best games ever made. I don't know if that type of long-term routing and memorization is. I question how much I value that anywhere. But I know that this is a very controversial opinion, so I'm trying to keep a little bit of an open mind about it. But yeah. Super high difficulty Celeste custom maps. That's, yeah, like you just can't sight read it, right? Like, and it's the same thing in like a rhythm game, right? Like when rhythm games get hard enough, including like custom maps and stuff, it becomes a completely different experience than it was when you first started playing the game and playing the more normal difficulty stages. There's like a sweet spot and a sweet number of times to try any particular challenge before you have just memorized too much of it, or you have to memorize too much of it, and it becomes a can you press the buttons at the right time challenge purely, rather than some kind of balance between pressing the buttons at the right time and reading what you're seeing and like interpreting what you're seeing, right? Yeah, Rolling Bird totally fits into this category I was talking about with like Post Void and Angel Game and stuff. Really like that game. And Caramel Action, of course. Extremely random for an arcade game. Broken record on N++, but it is grand in part because it's routing resistant well into the end game. Yeah, my impression is that is that N++ is not very routing heavy. I maybe should give that game some more time. Man, this dash item seems crazy. Oh, it's a trinket. It's a trinket? Anyway. These edits, man. Spelunky is the best non-arcade arcade game ever. I like it a lot. I mean, when you say non-arcade arcade game, do you just mean roguelike? Because, I would say Syncopause is the best non-arcade arcade game ever, if we're saying that. But if it has to be an action game specifically, or like, real-time challenge, then Syncopause being turn-based wouldn't count. So, yeah, Spelunky's definitely up there. Yeah, but yeah, I'm guessing you're saying that N++ is routing resistant. I mean, you definitely develop routes in those levels. You 100% can like try different strats and figure out which one is the better one and whatever, but the levels are so short that it's not like painful memorization like in an arcade game where you have to somehow load all of these levels into your head all at once in order to string together the whole run, right? Like that requires a degree of like, did he just pause bump or something? What was that? What is this Binding of Isaac tech that I didn't know about? I think you get what I'm saying. Yeah, shorter levels, and that's why I was saying neon white as well. It's a different experience when it comes to memorization and like routing compared to something like routing even one full stage of like a cave game. That's a lot more to grapple with, to route, and you can't see it all at once, right? The fact that you can't see the full stage of a cave game all at once, and it's kind of abstract even, like it's not about the background of the stage, it's about when the enemies spawn, right? And you kind of have to, I don't know, it's just a little bit harder to think. It takes more effort and more memorization to memo a cave game compared to memoing something like N++. But yeah, I do get the sense that it's more improvisational, which is cool. The physics, there's details of the physics where things are going to go slightly wrong, right? And like this bullet that's chasing you is gonna like loop around a little bit tighter this time because you moved slightly different, and it just gets off the rails really fast. I always kind of assumed that the game eventually got to the point where you do kind of just have to do it perfectly, but yeah, that's interesting if they did manage to make the levels get really, really hard without ever feeling like that. This cheese I'm witnessing right now is crazy. But that's what's great about Isaac. That's a large part of what's great about Isaac is the cheese. There's so much cheese to figure out. It's very Syncopause-like in that way, actually. There's so many strategies specific to the current run because there's so many possibilities. Every run is so different from every other run. There's always so much to learn. There's always new things to learn every run and new tricks, at least for a very long time. But Syncopause is even better about this, actually. Despite having way less complexity, way less like different items, Syncopause is a lot better about that. There's just crazy depth in that game. Syncopause is amazingly elegant. It's amazing. Okay, I think I have some ideas for this video. I mean, I had some ideas to start with, but I have some more ideas now, and I'll go back through this and think about this for what to recommend to more casual players. I was also thinking about Papers, Please, which has that kind of it has like story game appeal, I don't know if I should even be trying to target people who are like mostly into games for their stories, but like I think there's a lot of people who a story being in a game makes them want to play it more, even though they maybe have the potential to develop into a gameplay nerd someday. I don't know. Yeah. And I feel like Papers, Please is a good one for that. But yeah. Got to think about it more. But the other thing I wanted to touch on, and this relates to something I was just saying. Yeah, it relates to what I was just saying about the memo and stuff, like memorizing in games. I just thought this was interesting, worth talking about, right? This idea of, quote, trial and error in games. I kind of feel like, okay, so let me just read the tweet. Miyazaki has actually affirmed this more times than I can count. The community managed to gaslight itself into thinking these games were never built on trial and error, when in reality they always were. So he's saying that the Souls games were always built on trial and error, and the community has gaslighted themselves into thinking that they're not. He's referencing some Matthew Matosis video or something. I don't really agree with his framing totally. I think it's kind of wrong, but the point is just this general idea of games quote unquote being or being built on trial and error, I feel like is just a pointless way to think about games. Like it's just not quite, it's not an accurate enough framing, because I don't know if I ever find it a useful thing to say, because what isn't built on trial and error, which is what Niffle was saying, that's, or at least that's sort of what he was saying, right? But like let's just compare some games, right? Tetris. Obviously when you think about trial and error, you're thinking about games that are more routing heavy, games that like require you to learn a specific thing and then maybe like start over to get back to that point that you got to before. And now that you've learned that specific thing, you know, like I'm thinking like Gradius or like, again, like cave games, like often those games will just kill you if you don't have a good enough idea of what's going to spawn when and how you're going to approach and what they're going to do, like what kind of bullets they're going to shoot. I was about to say I want to be the guy as an example. So like there's a very big difference between something like a cave game and something like I want to be the guy. Even though both of those games are very much, there's a major element of you have to go through it from, you know, you have to go through it, and then you get set back because you didn't know enough of the arbitrary things that they decided about the level design, right? You have to go back and try it again, and now you know, so you can do something a little bit better, and then you die because you didn't know some other thing, and now you maybe have some other idea about how to do that, and eventually, you know, after enough quote-unquote trial and error, you get through it. Like, I can understand why someone would call that trial and error, and it is trial and error, but so is something like I Want to Be the Guy, and I Want to Be the Guy feels totally different. The gameplay experience of I Want to Be the Guy is completely different from the gameplay experience of Dodonpachi. It's like, you know, I'm trying to like, it's like I'm trying to execute this specific thing up to the point that I know how to do, and then I'm just gonna try something, and it's like there's like less of an expectation of it being fair in some way, and that kind of changes things. There's like way more humor to, you know, the traps, the tricks, the things that you have to memorize in I Want to Be the Guy, that quote unquote that you have to trial and error to learn. It's explicitly funny stuff. It's like really, it's goofy twists. There's a difference with the checkpoints, blah blah blah. There's just so many differences that make it feel like a totally different thing, to the point where calling both trial and error just feels kind of silly. But more than that, you can even jump to something as different as Tetris, and Tetris is still trial and error. Like, you are playing the game, you're trying to play the game, you are seeing what works and what doesn't work, and over time you are slowly honing in on what works. Like, that is trial and error. Like, there is trialing happening, and there are errors happening, and yeah, and like an in-between example would be something like Ghosts and Goblins, where you are doing trial and error, but it's often very unclear because the enemy behavior is so random. It's often very unclear what you can do about the things that you die to, right? Like, you die to this enemy behaving in a particular way, and then you might change your strategy, and you might think like, okay, well, I'm always going to stand over here at this point. When this enemy is over here, I'm going to stand right here and just be ready for this, and blah, blah, blah. Like, you might come up with a strategy like that, and that might also be completely wrong, because seeing it one time was not enough. You have to kind of see the thing multiple times to build up a more comprehensive picture of what this enemy can do, and in what kind of sequences and whatever, and hone in slowly close in on an overall strategy of how to deal with it that is going to work consistently, right? And Tetris is more like that. It's an even more extreme version of that, and you know, most more complicated games are a more extreme version of that, where it doesn't feel like trial and error in the normal sense you would say, but it's still trial and error. Like, it just is. But Souls games have massive allowances for errors as well. Yeah, that's a great point. So like how harshly it punishes you, and again with cave games, for example, or shmups in general, it's usually, you have several lives and you have several bombs, right? And so it's going to, how that trial and error feels is going to be very different for different players based on how good they are at pressing the bomb button, how proactive they are, how much risk tolerance they have, and things like that, and then, Souls obviously has like the health bar, which is almost the equivalent of the lives in the shmups. But yeah, it feels very different if you die in one hit versus versus like 3 hits and have flasks and blah blah blah. Yeah, I don't know how much more I had to say about this, but felt worth highlighting. Thought it was interesting how much the use of trial and error here rubbed me the wrong way. There's just, yeah, that just doesn't describe the actual experience at all. In general, let me generalize. I wish people would talk about games in a way that is more focused on how it feels to play the game and how you actually experience it. That seems like a really stupid thing to say when I say it out loud, but like, it's kind of amazing how little people focus on that. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good example. But yeah. Is it even good game design to make your obstacles so easily clearable the first time? You could say that it's good game design to have like something like Slay the Spire, where it has these increasing difficulty levels, and if you're a skilled player, you should be able to get through the first difficulty level on the first try, and then more or less keep up with the increasing difficulty over time. I don't really remember Limbo, but I remember not liking it very much. But yeah, and the thing I want to highlight, like, so is it even good game design to make your obstacles so easily clearable the first time? This is kind of getting at one part of what I'm trying to say, which is, what is the good experience of a Souls game? Maybe a Souls game is not the best example. Whoa. What is the good experience of like some kind of boss fight type of game? Let's just say it's a boss rush and doesn't have runbacks or anything like that. The good experience is like learning the boss patterns well enough, learning the boss well enough that you know how to adapt, and that kind of has, each boss kind of has an arc to it, where when you first encounter it, it's much more reactive, and it's much more, you have to try to just try to guess what's coming, or anticipate, or be ready for anything and react as best you can. But you're also in those early stages, you're watching and you're trying to notice patterns in what the boss is doing and blah blah blah, and then eventually that experience slowly turns into an experience that's much more like doing the dance, and you know everything about this boss, or you at least know enough to beat it, and you can kind of just execute and stay locked in and do it. And that's cool. If we imagine that as the cool experience that we're considering good game design, if we manage to create that experience, it maybe shouldn't be clearable on the first try. Even if you're really good, right? Like if the boss even if you're just really good at games in general, like if the boss is complex enough, it would have to be a really long boss fight to give that kind of good experience on the first try, right? Like maybe it's giving you a lot of. I guess I just feel like the good experience is like it gives you something like Souls games, right? Or like Hollow Knight, where it gives you enough leeway to like get away and heal sometimes, but maybe not consistently enough that you can always, or maybe not enough times that you can just heal your way and tank your way through the entire boss fight. I don't know. I just completely lost my train of thought. But yeah, I think the stream's been going on too long because I'm fading. But I think we're probably on the same page about this. No one seems to be disagreeing with me. So doing X in a game is bad, and then categorizing everything even remotely similar as that clearly past the point of usefulness. Exactly. Yeah, it just bothers me. Now, do I try this? Do I try to go back to this? I don't think I do. I think I need to take a break and eat some food and do this off stream. Apologies that I only did 3 clues on stream, but I don't know how interesting it would actually be to see me stare at some of these for a really long time, and then eventually realize that I don't even know the word. But I do recommend Cryptic Crosswords. Okay, but one. I will repeat myself from the beginning of the stream before I go. Next week, Gate of Derelict Star fame. Derelict Star, the objective game of the year 2026 so far. Gate will be joining me on the stream, and we'll be talking about Derelict Star. Yes, the platformer. If you're going to play one platformer in your life, you should play Celeste, and then you'll be ready to play the actual good platformer, which is Derelict Star. But yeah, if you have any interest in Derelict Star, I encourage you to play it this week, at least a little bit, because it's going to be an interesting discussion. And then you can ask questions. We will take questions from the chat as well, probably. And yeah, it's like a kind of little bit of exploration. It's not like not as exploration heavy as like a real Metroidvania or whatever, but it's got a little bit of like exploring a big open space, and but it's it's definitely not like a Metroidvania in the sense that like in Derelict Star you can go anywhere from the beginning if you know enough, but it's got some kind of hidden tech that maybe you aren't going to figure out unless you go to particular areas first or whatever. It's a kind of precise platformer. There's some precision in it, but it's much more about knowing the tricks and understanding all the weird stuff that you can do with this movement system than it is about pressing the buttons at the right time. Most of the time. Sometimes there's some optional stuff where you really got to press those buttons, or you really got to get precise with it. But yeah, it's a really, really interesting game, and I recommend it. So yep, that's gonna be it. Thanks for hanging out. Have a good week. Bye bye.